Hey folks, today I'm going to be giving you a bit of an overview on an alternate Frost Claw setup that I've been testing. This setup is somewhat inspired by the RetributionGaming setup with the Fire Frost Claw, and if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. I will put a link in the description. So to jump into it, the main difference between that setup and this setup is, in my interpretation, I decided to focus entirely on the immunity portion. And instead of just using it periodically or situationally, I decided to try spamming it as much as possible, getting my cooldown as low as possible, and trying to maximize my immunity uptime. So I've changed my gear around a little bit. I managed to get cooldown reduction on my Strands of Souls, and I also got a cooldown reduction Blood of the Exile. Right now I'm sitting at 202 intelligence, which with the Runemaster passive here, gives me an extra 50% cooldown recovery. So if we look at our cooldown reduction, we are at 116%, which is quite a lot, and that has our teleport on a 1.9 second cooldown. What that means with Wrongwarp is that we have about a 53% uptime on our damage immunity. So most of the time, we can't take any damage at all. And when stuff does make it through, we have some synergy with our Core of the Mountain. Then this will proc, giving us 3 seconds of immunity every 15 seconds. So that's pretty good. Otherwise, not much else has changed with the build. I am currently using Eternal Gauntlets. I was using the Ravenous Void before, but with the Lightning Leech that we're using with our Enigma, we don't actually manage to leech right away because we're using Fire Frost Claw, so we only start leeching once the spark charges detonate. So a lot of times we end up dipping down pretty low in health, and it tends to proc the Ravenous Void, and then it breaks the buff there. So I prefer to use the Eternal Gauntlets. The other synergy here is that we do get quite a bit of armor. So we get up to pretty much 5,000 armor at all times, which is quite a lot. So with this, we get a huge amount of that applied to the damage over time. So as you know, that's one of the most deadly things in high corruption, so I am liking this quite a bit. And we get a bit of cast speed too, so that's always nice. These suffixes are pretty terrible, so if you can get something better than this, then definitely go for it. But that's where I'm at. Otherwise, the rings are still the same. The relic is still the same. Necklace, I went for Shred and Frailty because normally you get that on your ladle, but with the Wrongwarp, we don't get Shred or Frailty, so I got it here. That helps quite a bit. And one thing you'll notice is right now I'm actually not crit reduction capped. I'm at about 60%, but doing some echoes, it doesn't seem like it actually matters that much. Ideally, you want to be closer to 100, but that's where I am at right now with my gear. I had a pretty bad slam here. This should be better, but it's okay. So I'll start by jumping into the skills, and we'll go from there. So we'll start with Frost Claw, because this is the most important thing. The first thing you'll probably notice is that I'm using the Fire Frost Claw. The reason why I'm doing that is because both Teleport and Runic Invocation don't have an element on them. And that means that there's only 3 slots left on our skill bar to get the Frost, Fire, Frost for rare wins. We're basically forced into making Frost Claw either cold or fire. Otherwise, we won't get the buff, which is extremely strong. It's a bunch of DR, a bunch of ward. You pretty much need it for this build. So with that said, fire is the play. So here we are with Fire Frost Claw, and I found that I wasn't really able to sustain mana because I don't get the +1 from Enigma for lightning anymore. And my solution to that was I spec'd out of Volley of Glass completely, which reduced our mana cost by a huge amount. And with all those extra points, I was able to take out the extra point of celerity here. I didn't even need Frozen Rain anymore, so I saved all those points here. And with that, I was also able to pick up Frozen Malice for auto-aim, put 2 points into Shiver Shell, 2 points into Bright Frost, and we're still only at 20 mana. So this is actually a mana generator now, and we get all this extra stuff. So that's pretty cool. And one thing I found with Volley of Glass is it doesn't actually give us extra Novas, which is where our spark charges come from. So that's the majority of our damage here. And taking this out only reduces our single target by maybe 25 to 30%. And in exchange, we gain a whole bunch of other stuff. So I think it's definitely worth If you don't have enough points to run Volley of Glass, don't worry about it, just unspec it, and then grab a bunch of other stuff. So that's good. And yeah, otherwise our Frost Claw setup is mostly the same, just those few node changes. Nova is pretty much exactly the same, nothing has changed here. Snap Freeze we've changed a little bit now that we have a lot of cooldown. I felt that it wasn't worth pathing to this duration anymore, so I grabbed some extra interesting stuff. The main thing is I grabbed armor on cooldown. So this is basically 100% uptime. You should be spamming it just for this armor. It gets multiplied by all of our armor increases from strength and other sources. So this does work pretty well. And I also got this Frozen Ground, which gives a little bit of slow stuff. I just didn't really have anywhere else to put the points. Couldn't make it to this one, so yeah, this ended up being pretty good as well. For Runic, we haven't really changed it since the original build, so definitely check that out if you haven't seen it. And Teleport, the main thing here is cooldown, so I grabbed cooldown. And I also grabbed the global cooldown recovery for the same reason. We want as much as we can get. And pathing there, we also get the armor if you've casted in the past 4 seconds, which we always have. And it gives us cold resistance too, which one of our passives gives fire and lightning. So the synergy here is that we pretty much have our res capped from this at all times. Then we also path down, we gain ward per cast of teleport. And here's another big note here, ward gain per point of int. So we have about 200 int, that is 200 ward every 1.9 seconds. So over 100 ward per second just from teleport alone. We also have the conversion, so this works similar as Twisted Heart. And that means that every cast of teleport we gain quite a lot of ward. So here you can see it's a pretty significant amount of ward just from teleport alone. And with our lower cooldown, we also have Runic Invocation on 4.2 seconds. So when I'm casting both, assuming I do it correctly, so Frost Guard, you can see it's quite a lot of ward. Without even casting Frost Claw, it's significant. So that's really good. Next we'll jump into the passives real quick. So you'll notice quite a few changes here. The main thing is I've taken out Celestial Doom and Brand of Deception because we don't have a lightning skill, and because we can't really use Brand of Subjugation easily with Flame Rush. I took out the points here. There was 5 here at 7 here. That saves us 12 points. So I've allocated them throughout the tree a little bit. I took out the Runeward Hurricane because we're not using Lightning Frost Claw anymore. The Inferno gives us a armor multiplier, so this is pretty good. We also put an extra point in here. I grabbed some shock here because I was not having enough shock now that I'm not Lightning Frost Claw. In the Sorcerer tree, we haven't really changed anything here. I grabbed a couple extra points of armor because I didn't really have anywhere else to put them. If you aren't crit capped, you should put the points into either the crit chance here or the crit chance here, but I already was crit capped, so I didn't need to do that. Just keep in mind that these points could be good for you depending on your build. This is the other major change though, so we'll go into that. Reactive ward, turns out it's actually pretty good. And the main thing behind how this works is it gives you 60% of your max health as a ward every 12 seconds. But if you take this silver rune here, the amount of ward you get is multiplied by 1.45, so it's about 87%. And the cooldown is reduced to 6. So it's roughly 87% of your max life as ward every 6 seconds. So something like 14 or 15% of your max life per second, which is a crazy, crazy amount of ward. Yeah, so you'll see that if I drop below 70 here, which I typically do, I get a pretty big burst of ward. And then here we'll do it again. You can see it procs off of teleport because it is converting some ward. So there, that's like 1500 ward right there, in addition to the teleport. So it's quite a lot. So even without any leech or hitting any monsters, just casting with nothing around, I'm building up pretty big ward numbers here. Normally you need to be hitting things to get a huge amount of ward, but with this current setup, we don't even need that. We're just getting free ward from Runic, teleport, reactive ward, all that other stuff. So yeah, that's pretty good. Anyway, let's jump into an Echo, and I'll show you what the gameplay looks like. So here we are in an Echo. Let's get started. As before, there isn't really a skill rotation, you're kind of just spamming. Most of your stuff you want to be on cooldown at all times. The Wrongwarp is giving us a stun every 1.9 seconds. So pretty much everything we're fighting is either dead or stunned. And we're also immune for anything that doesn't get hit by our stun. Pretty much engage every fight with a stun. And if your stun's on cooldown, you can just pop your snap freeze. It's very hard for anything to actually do damage to us. Make sure that you do continue to reposition, because once your immunity runs out, you are vulnerable. Although with our armor numbers and our ward numbers, usually you're going to be okay. Even if you do take a hit, something makes it through. You can see the single target damage is a little bit lower than the ladle setup. This is definitely a known issue, and it's also made a bit worse by the fact that I don't have Volley of Glass, but you can probably make your single target a little bit better. Let's jump into another Echo, hopefully one that has a bit more monster density. You can see a lot of the enemy windups tend to take longer than 0.9 seconds. So pretty often, you'll find that enemies just get completely stun locked by our Wrongwarp. Like that exiled mage there couldn't actually get an attack off. The eyes here are probably our biggest threat out of any enemy in the game because they are stun immune. So tend to be careful around those. You can just play at ranged and you're usually going to be okay though. You can always just kite in between your chrono warps as well. Try and keep yourself a little bit safe when you see damage incoming. You can time your Wrongwarps if you want. But for the most part, we don't really take any damage. Now let's jump into a boss fight. I'm not going to bother showing the shade because the fight goes the exact same as my other build. You just stun lock it and eventually it dies. So I will show the timeline boss instead. So this is what bosses typically look like. They try and attack, and between snap freeze and Wrongwarp, it's not really a whole lot that they can do. The damage isn't amazing, but as far as survivability, it's definitely there. And yeah, there might be some potential for this build to do a pretty big arena push with the right setup. So I'm interested to see if anybody can make that work. I don't know if I'm going to bother to put in another big arena run. So it definitely is really time consuming and also boring, but If you guys want to give this a try yourself, definitely let me know, and feel free to send any questions my way, or join the community Discord. I'll put that link in the description as well. So yeah, come in there and ask any questions about the builds. Come theorycraft with us, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers, folks.